New digital scan of the Titanic has offered an unprecedented insight into the ship's final moments.
For more than 111 years, the Titanic has kept its secrets hidden in the darkness of the North Atlantic. We thought we knew what happened that terrible night. We believed the story was complete. But a new underwater drone has just entered parts of the ship that no human has seen since April 15, 1912. And what its cameras found shocked even experienced researchers. Deep inside the wreck, they discovered strange clues, silent evidence, and details that challenge what we thought we knew about the disaster that killed more than 1,500 people. So, what did the drone find inside the Titanic? And why does the footage feel so terrifying? Let's dive in. The cabin's secret. On July 23, 2023, a team of marine archaeologists began a mission that many people thought was impossible. Two roboticists, Evan Kovac and Brett Feov, had spent 13 years developing a special underwater drone called the Ocean Gate Phantom. They designed it to enter places that no other remotely operated vehicle could safely reach. The mission started from the research vessel Horizon Arctic. The drone slowly descended through more than 2 miles of black water until it reached the Titanic, resting 12,467 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. Then, the real journey began. The Phantom moved toward the bow section of the ship. It approached a first-class stateroom known as Cabin B52. The porthole had rusted away long ago, leaving just enough space for the small drone to slip inside. As the camera entered the room, everything looked strangely calm. The cabin remained surprisingly intact after more than 111 years. A brass bed frame still stood against the wall. The mattress had disappeared long ago, but the frame remained. A wash basin still clung to the opposite wall. Parts of the room looked frozen in time. Then the camera revealed something unexpected. A single pair of shoes rested on the floor. At first, it did not seem unusual. The deep ocean often preserves leather long after other materials disappear. But as the drone moved farther into the room, another pair appeared. Then, several more. Soon, the researchers realized they were looking at dozens of pairs of shoes scattered throughout the cabin. The discovery created a heavy silence inside the control room. Each pair marked the place where a person had once been. The bodies were gone. Time and nature had taken them away. But the shoes remained exactly where they had been left behind. The room suddenly felt less like a shipwreck and more like a frozen moment from the past. The deeper the drone looked, the stranger the scene became. The shoes were not only on the floor. Some appeared against the walls. Others seemed trapped higher inside the room. Several had become locked inside rust formations that had slowly grown around them during the last 111 years. The positions did not look natural. That detail caught the attention of Dr. Sarah Chen. She studied the footage carefully. The placement of the artifacts suggested something very different from the story many experts had accepted for decades. The evidence pointed toward violent movement inside the cabin. Water may not have entered slowly. It may have rushed inside with enormous force. People may have been thrown across the room as the sea burst through the ship. The more researchers studied the footage, the more uncomfortable the discovery became. The cabin no longer looked like a place where people quietly waited for help. It looked like a place where chaos arrived in seconds and changed everything. And if the first-class cabins revealed evidence this disturbing, the lower decks were about to uncover a story that felt even darker. The final escape. The Phantom left the first-class cabins and moved deeper into the Titanic. The light from its cameras cut through darkness that had remained untouched since April 15th. 1912. Every turn revealed another piece of the ship's final hours. The deeper the drone traveled, the heavier the atmosphere became. The luxury of the upper decks slowly disappeared. A very different world waited below. Then the cameras entered the third-class areas. These narrow corridors once carried families searching for a better life. Men, women, and children had walked through these passages during the Titanic's maiden voyage. Now only silence remained. Thick layers of silt covered the floors. Rust covered the walls. Time had erased almost everything. Yet some objects still remained exactly where they had been left behind. What appeared next immediately caught the attention of the research team. A small toy rested beside a wall. Then another object appeared nearby. The drone moved closer and revealed a doll with a porcelain face. After more than a century underwater, the face still remained visible. A short distance away sat a small wooden horse. Neither object looked important by itself. Together, they painted a heartbreaking picture of the people who once lived in these spaces. The deeper the drone traveled, the more personal the discoveries became. Nearby, other personal belongings rested untouched. These items carried no names. They carried no voices. Yet they seemed to tell a story all on their own. The footage became harder to watch. The drone followed the route toward Scotland Road, the long corridor that stretched through E-Deck. Historians have studied this area for decades. Many believed they understood what happened here during the sinking. Then the cameras revealed something unexpected. Strange marks appeared along the walls. At first, they looked like random patterns created by rust. The team studied them more closely. As the images became clearer, a shocking detail emerged. These were not random shapes. They were handprints. Rust had preserved the empty spaces where human hands once pressed against the metal. Most pointed in the same direction. They followed a path toward the stern and toward the third-class stairwells. The pattern suggested movement. It suggested people searching for a way out, while darkness and rising water surrounded them. Then one final detail stopped the team cold. One set of handprints sat much lower than all the others. The prints measured only a few feet above the floor. They belonged to a child. Those small hands seemed to follow the same path as everyone else, moving toward an escape that may never have been reached. The passengers left behind silent clues throughout these corridors. But the people aboard were not the only witnesses. Hidden deeper inside the ship, Titanic itself was about to reveal a secret that could change the entire story. Doors never closed. For more than a century, experts believed they understood how the Titanic filled with water. The explanation seemed simple. The ship had a special safety system designed to slow flooding and keep the damage under control. 15 watertight walls divided the Titanic into 16 compartments. The idea was simple. If water entered one section, it would not easily spread to the rest of the ship. Large watertight doors stood between those sections. The crew could close those doors automatically, manually, or from the bridge. Engineers believed those doors gave the ship a chance to survive serious damage. For generations, nobody seriously challenged that explanation. Then the Phantom entered E-Deck. The drone moved carefully through dark passageways that had remained untouched for generations. The team expected to find signs that matched the accepted story. Instead, the cameras recorded something nobody expected to see. One door stood open. At first, the discovery seemed unimportant. The researchers continued the survey. Then another door appeared. It was open too. The drone moved farther along the passage. A third door came into view. That one remained open as well. The atmosphere inside the control room changed immediately. The team reviewed the footage again. They enhanced the images. They examined every visible detail. The result remained the same each time. The doors showed no signs of damage. The mechanisms appeared intact. Rust covered the metal, but nothing suggested mechanical failure. The evidence pointed in one direction. The doors had never closed. That realization carried enormous consequences. For decades, historians believed the watertight system slowed the spread of water. They believed flooding stayed confined inside separate compartments until water eventually spilled over the tops of the bulkheads. The new footage suggested a very different situation. Open doors would have allowed water to move much faster through the ship. Instead of staying trapped in one area, it could spread from section to section almost immediately. The disaster suddenly looked very different. The accepted timeline began to feel less certain. The movement of water may have happened far faster than earlier studies suggested. Conditions inside the ship may have become dangerous much sooner than anyone realized. Every new possibility forced researchers to re-examine assumptions that had survived for 111 years. The implications reached far beyond a single corridor or a single door. The evidence touched the entire sequence of events during Titanic's final hours. The more the team studied the footage, the larger the mystery became. If the doors remained open, someone needed to explain why. If the safety system never activated, another hidden piece of the story still waited inside the wreck. And deep near the bridge, frozen beneath more than a century of corrosion and silence, the next clue was already waiting. Frozen last orders. After the discovery on E-deck, the Phantom continued deeper into the wreck. The next target sat near one of the most important parts of the ship. This area included the officer quarters, the wheelhouse, and the bridge section where key decisions were made during Titanic's final hours. Reaching it was not easy. Parts of the structure had collapsed long ago. Twisted metal blocked several paths. The Phantom came dangerously close to getting trapped inside the wreck. The risk felt worth taking. Every foot forward carried the team closer to a place connected directly to the night of the disaster that immediately caught everyone's attention. This device allowed officers to send engine commands during normal operations and emergencies. For decades, historians believed they understood what happened when the iceberg appeared. That story became part of almost every book, documentary, and discussion about Titanic. Then the Phantom revealed a detail nobody expected. Researchers examined the footage carefully. They zoomed in on every visible detail. Marine engineers reviewed the images. Titanic historians studied the mechanism. The discovery created a new mystery. If the indicator truly remained in that position since the disaster, then some part of the traditional story might be incomplete. The footage did not provide a final answer. It did not prove exactly what happened on the bridge, but it introduced a possibility that experts could not ignore. The debate quickly grew. Some researchers suggested the historical record might contain mistakes. Others believed officers may have made decisions that never appeared in official accounts. The deeper researchers looked, the less certain the old narrative appeared. The Telegraph remained silent. Yet its position seemed to tell part of a story nobody fully understood. The Phantom continued its survey. Ahead waited one of the first spaces touched by the flooding. Inside that dark compartment, the drone would uncover evidence connected to old reports, forgotten warnings, and a danger that may have started before the iceberg ever appeared. The next discovery would bring every clue together and reveal a possibility far more disturbing than anyone expected. Fire before ice. And in the next stage of the mission, the Phantom entered Boiler Room 6. This area sat near the front of the ship and became one of the first places touched by flooding. Leading fireman Frederick Barrett later testified that he worked there when the iceberg struck. His account remained one of the most important records from that night. The drone now gave researchers a chance to compare those old memories with physical evidence. Everything looked silent, but one detail immediately stood out. Dark marks covered part of a bunker wall. The pattern looked different from normal damage. It spread outward from a central point and appeared far too severe for ordinary wear. The discovery changed the direction of the investigation. Researchers searched through old records and found reports of a coal bunker fire that burned before the disaster. The fire started after the Titanic left Southampton. Officials investigated the problem. Many people later treated it as a small issue that never played a major role in the sinking. The footage suggested something very different. The marks looked like signs of intense heat. The team asked experts to study them more closely. That decision opened another important chapter in the story. Dr. Sarah Chen brought in metallurgist Dr. James Patterson, a specialist in maritime disaster forensics. He examined the images and focused on the damaged steel. His conclusion carried enormous weight. He explained that long exposure to extreme heat can weaken metal. According to his analysis, the steel may have lost between 30 and 40% of its original strength. That possibility changed everything. If fire weakened the hull before the collision, then the iceberg may have struck a ship that already carried hidden damage. The chain of events suddenly looked far more serious. Fire came first. Then the iceberg arrived. Then water rushed through the damaged structure. Then open doors may have allowed flooding to spread faster than expected. Separate clues now started connecting together. The discoveries from different parts of the wreck no longer looked isolated. They began forming one larger picture. The implications reached beyond engineering. The records showed that crew members knew about the fire. Officers knew about it as well. People believed they could manage the situation. They trusted the ship and continued the voyage. That decision now seemed far more important than many earlier reports suggested. The footage did not rewrite history on its own. Yet it forced researchers to look at old evidence from a new angle. Every new detail added pressure to the traditional narrative. Every clue pushed investigators closer to a different understanding of the disaster. By the end of the survey, researchers no longer saw a simple story about an iceberg. They saw warning signs, difficult choices, and risks that may have started long before the collision. And as all the evidence slowly came together, an entirely different Titanic began to emerge from the darkness. Truth buried deep. By the time the Phantom completed its survey, the mission looked very different from what researchers expected at the beginning. The team had entered the wreck hoping to document interior spaces and preserve a record of areas that may not survive much longer. Instead, they uncovered evidence that challenged some of the most accepted parts of the Titanic story. Piece by piece, the findings began forming a larger picture. The shoes inside passenger cabins suggested sudden and violent movement. The handprints along the walls pointed toward desperate attempts to reach safety. The open, watertight doors raised serious concerns about how flooding spread through the ship. The telegraph position introduced new questions about decisions made during the disaster. The heat damage inside Boiler Room 6 suggested that hidden problems may have existed before the iceberg ever appeared. Each discovery carried its own importance. Together, they created something much larger. In November 2023, the research team published its findings in the Journal of Maritime Archaeology. The paper carried the title Interior Survey of RMS Titanic: Evidence of Pre-Impact Hull Weakness and Watertight System Failure. The publication immediately sparked debate. Some Titanic historians welcomed the new evidence. They believed the findings helped explain details that had never fully made sense. Others remained cautious and argued that several discoveries could still have different explanations. The discussions grew intense, but one fact remained unchanged. The footage existed. The images existed. The physical evidence existed. Researchers could debate the meaning, but they could not ignore what the cameras recorded inside the wreck. Another important realization slowly emerged. This story was never only about a ship. It was also about how people remember disasters. Over time, societies often simplify complicated events. They create stories that feel easier to understand. They focus on a few causes and a few lessons. The Phantom reminded everyone that history is rarely that simple. Human decisions, technical failures, hidden risks, and unexpected events often work together in ways that people do not fully understand until many years later. The mission also arrived at an important moment. The Titanic continues to deteriorate beneath the North Atlantic. Many interior spaces may collapse in the coming decades. The Phantom captured details that future generations may never see again. Those images now exist as permanent records available to researchers around the world. When the mission finally ended, it left behind more than answers. It left behind new questions. It revealed how much remains unknown even after more than a century of study. Most importantly, it showed that the Titanic still has a voice. Through silent corridors, forgotten objects, damaged steel, and hidden clues, the wreck told a story that continues to challenge everything we thought we knew. The Titanic may rest in darkness, but its story continues to speak today. If you could explore one hidden part of the wreck, what would you want to see and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And as we leave this story, remember that some secrets wait generations before they reach light. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because we'll be uploading more incredible stories like this one in the coming weeks. Until then, see ya.